I'll call to order the Committee of Whole Council meeting for Monday, December 2nd, 2024. We'll start with the acknowledgements of treaties of peace and friendship. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Wolastoqiyik, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqiyik title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. Thank you, Walalan. Next is the oath of office. We do hereby accept the office of council and will diligently, faithfully, and impartially discharge to the best of our ability the duties of the office as may be imposed upon us by law. Next is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes? If not, can we get a motion?
M 2024-1202-119, that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Seconder?
I'll second it.
On the question, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passed. Next, statements of conflict of interest. If any council member has a conflict of interest they want to acknowledge with the clerk, CEO Lee, this evening, please do so. Petitions, presentations, and delegations. We do have a presentation tonight from Paul Shannon. So Paul, if you want to take the mic. And welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, administration, and public. Just as a short introduction, I plan on presenting a text, and I'll read from it for most of it, and I may make a few side comments from time to time. Most of the stuff in this paper that I prepared, I have shared with you already in the past. I think in one occasion it was at the very beginning of your mandate as a council. Not all of the material here, but some of it. So in fact, for many of you, it's old news. Hopefully not fake news, but old news. So we'll start from there. I'm starting with mostly demographics and statistics. And this I also want to ensure that the public is aware of some of the issues facing this village around population, around aging, and these types of matters. So as much as it's important to me and hopefully important to council, I'm hoping that the public will seize on it as well and figure out at some point we should be working to do something about it. So starting with demographics and needs, and the first item is population decline. The population of the village of Baldoon declined by 92 persons, or 6.5%, between 2016 and 2021, and that's according to the 2021 census. Over the past 20 years, the population declined by 598 persons, or 31.1%. That's over the past 20 years. Only the parish of Durham, which is immediate to the west, lost more population, 36%, in all census communities between Atholville and Bathurst. So the next biggest loser in this area was Point Verte, that's according to 2021 census, and that was only 17% compared to our over 30%. So as a matter of curiosity or maybe boredom, I decided to do a little bit of historical research too around population trends for the area. And from 1981 to 1921, which is a 40-year period, Baldoon, and I included here the parish of Durham, because in 1981, Durham was a better measure for picking up on the population. In that 40-year period, we've lost 55% of our population, 55%. Going back even farther, we had, I went all the way back 100 years, 1921, just for curiosity. And in 1921, and this does not include Lower Beldoon because that was in Gloucester County, and I had no way of picking out Lower Beldoon from the rest of Beresford Parish, which is Petit Rocher and Point Verte, et cetera, but not including Lower Beldoon from the county line down. In 1921, there was 2,237 people in the parish of Durham, including Jacket River, including the part of Beldoon going to the county line. So in 2021, we're almost at the same point, 2,275. And as a matter of fact, in 1921, it would have been more because we would have had Lower Beldoon. If Lower Beldoon had been included, it would have been even higher. Curiously enough, too, in 1981, the combined population of Durham Parish, which is Nash Creek, Lorne, Black Point, and the village of Beldoon, in 1981, and like Jacket River, Beldoon, it was over 4,000. We had 4,000 people in 1981, and now we're down to 2,200 and so. So to me, that's a concern. I mentioned the parish of Durham and those communities because it was raised at a recent council meeting that maybe we should be exploring, inviting that area to join the municipality of Beldoon. And I think it's worthwhile exploring. And, you know, it got missed out, obviously, with the last amalgamation throughout the province. I don't think we should just simply accept. We have to do sort of a cost-benefit analysis. You know, what do we gain by doing that? What's the possible disadvantages? But we are communities of interest. You know, we have much more community of interest with that area than we normally do with the areas, let's say, to the east, like Point Verte, Petit Roche, Beresford, and those areas. Relationships, all kinds of things, businesses. So that's about the population. I want to move to the other problem of an aging population. So Beldoon and Durham Parish have the highest average age in the same region, that's from Atholville to Bathurst, 54.4 years and 54.6 years respectively. In fact, Beldoon is the 5th oldest community in the province based on average age. 38.5% of our population is aged 65 and older. Now, I'm getting to something which is dear to my heart. Many of our older citizens receive home care and personal support services. However, if they require a placement in a residential care facility, they must move out of our community. In addition to the 4 nursing homes between Hamilton and Bathurst, there are a total of 57 special care homes licensed to provide up to 1,135 beds. The village of Beldoon and the parish of Durham are the only areas without their own special care home. We should be reaching out to the province as well as to the Special Care Home Association to solicit their support for a care facility for our village. The village should also offer incentives for an operator to set up in Beldoon, because that might be the only thing that would encourage them to come here. Now, that's basically a lobbying role because obviously council has no control. It's not a direct responsibility of council, but lobbying is still something that we probably should be doing. I personally contacted the Minister of Community Services back in May and to argue the case for a special care home in our area. In addition to the statistics which I've already presented and the number of special care homes that already exist, I indicated that a contributing factor in the population decline is the fact of not having any long-term residential facilities for seniors in Beldoon and Durham Parish. When seniors require nursing home care or special care home placement, they must move away from their community of interest. Most seniors have lived here for their entire lives. Having to move 20 or 30 miles away is a disruptive for them, as well as family members and friends who, being seniors themselves, find it difficult to make regular trips to see loved ones. Your government's recent federal-provincial health agreement, and that was the previous Higgs government, in March of this year, the statement on this agreement has the following, and I quote, "The Aging with Dignity agreement is $117 million to support New Brunswick's 5-year action plan to help residents age with dignity close to home." That's in their statement, close to home, with access to home care or care in a long-term care facility. So I also indicated in this letter to her that the present policy for special care home licenses, which is a first-come, first-serve approach, is, in my opinion, misguided, since it appears to cater more to the interests and desires of the operators and less on the interests and the needs of communities. Once approved in a region or sub-region, the operator can set up the home wherever he or she chooses, even though the community already has one or more homes. Additionally, I've been informed that existing operators are favored over new applicants. How else to justify that several operators in both regions have more than one license? Your website confirms this, with one operator having 9 licenses to operate different facilities in both the Carleton and Bathurst regions. I go on to say that Baldoon has several existing services which would be supportive and complementary to a special care home in our community. We have the Jacket River Health Clinic as well as a local pharmacy. When seniors are placed in care facilities outside our community, they usually go to a new healthcare provider and a new pharmacy. The loss of population over the years has challenged many businesses in our village or in our area to remain viable and available to the public at large, including pharmacies. It doesn't bode well for local businesses and services when they lose access to existing customers because they have been relocated to other locations in the region. And I'm sure all of you here, everyone in the public, either has somebody today or did have someone in a special care home in Dalhousie, Bathurst, Beresford, or wherever. Another important component of senior care is the presence of home care agencies in the community. We are fortunate to have located in the parish of Durham a home care agency which provides the majority of home care services to our residents. This agency also provides approved personal support worker training, which would be a definite asset to a new special care home in our community. So I see a special care home in our community as a win-win. There's no loss there. It's a win-win. It's a win because it's good for seniors and their families. It's a win because it creates employment. You know, these workers are going to have, they need workers. They need care workers. They need cooks. They need maintenance staff. It's important to local business. And it's also a tax base growth. It will increase our tax base. So I did receive a response about 2 to 3 months afterwards from the minister responsible for seniors, not the same minister as community service, and I'll just share part of what she said. Special care homes are owned and operated privately. Currently, we do not have anyone on the waiting list who wishes to build in Baldoon. Existing operators who wish to build more facilities or have additional beds are placed on the waiting list like any new applicant. If there are no applicants on the waiting list, they are naturally at the top of the list. There is no limit to the number of facilities an operator can have. When the Department of Social Development approves new beds for an area, their location is not determined by community, but by the area or region. So, and she goes on to say, if anybody wants to apply to put one in Baldoon, they're welcome. You know, a lot of yada, yada, yada statements, and like, you know, as long as you apply, we'll get it. Well, we had someone who applied around 2011-12, and by 2019, she still not had been approved. And the school here was the area where she had planned on placing that special care home. Now, obviously, after waiting 6-7 years, it's time to move on. And at the time, council was very supportive of her application, I do recall. Now, one of the other things that could be done, and I know this for a fact, the Campbellton region was one region at one point. And a few years back, they divided up into 2 sub-regions, one for Campbellton down to about Dalhousie, and one from the Dalhousie region area down to Beldoon. It was the lobbying of people and mayors and councils from Balmoral, Eel River Crossing, and Dalhousie, who convinced the government to create a separate sub-region for them. As a result, I believe Balmoral today has something like 70 bids, special care home bids. So maybe that's another alternative. Maybe we should be pressuring government to allow us to have our own sub-region. So that deals with the special care home file, or what maybe we could be looking at. The other one is about community-based primary health care. It's an important service for seniors as well as the general population. The newly elected provincial government has announced a plan for 30 additional community care collaborative clinics throughout the province. I'd like to know, where does Jacket River Health Clinic fit in this plan? And again, that's a lobbying role. You don't have direct responsibility for it, but I think we as in other areas, we have to sort of lobby and be an advocate for the health clinic. Where do they fit in with all of this new planning? Okay, the third item was tax-based growth and housing needs. And I point out here that the village of Beldoon lost $44,230,000 some odd dollars from its tax base in 2021, which was a loss of 14%. This was the highest loss of all municipalities in the province by a large margin. I'm assuming that was due to the smelter closure. There may have been some other issues, but I'm not aware of what they would have been. So the only other municipality in our region to incur a loss was Dalhousie, which was less than 2%. Now, that's fine. We had a closure of the smelter. But since the closure of the smelter in the last 2 to 3 years, year over year, we haven't improved very much. The most recent reports on tax-based growth for all municipal entities in the province fixed Beldoon's tax-based growth for 2023 at 0.06%, which is the lowest in the province, and year 2024 at 1.4%, also the lowest in the province, and year 2025 at 2.4%, which is the second lowest in the province. So as I'm sure you already know, the tax base is based on new construction, but also on the appraisal of existing properties. So we haven't, our values, the evaluations of our properties hasn't increased very much either. The industrial tax base is a major source of tax revenue for the village. Council must continue to have positive relationships with industry and to encourage growth while maintaining the interest of citizens and the environment. Our village must also be prepared to deal with any major developments in the industrial sector which could have impact on village finances. Now, I think it's important that we have a relationship with industry, especially in the industrial sector, and if we agree with a particular kind of business setting up, we have to make sure that they have the social license to do it, that we're behind them 100%, if it's compatible with the interests of the community and with the environment. But we have to be realistic about how much power and influence we actually have. When it comes to a $1 billion plant or business establishing on the port of Beldoon or the federal property, we don't have a lot of influence over that. But we can still support the ones who can do it. The port of Beldoon doesn't have a lot of influence. They set up I was on the board for 9 years. They set up the conditions for a company or proponent to come in. They tell them what the rates are at the port, what facilities the port has, how we're competitive with other ports. But after that, it's pretty much up to the proponent to get it across the finish line. It's not the port, it's not the village. Not too many make it past the finish line. That's the unfortunate thing. Very, very few get across the finish line. So we do have a support role to play there, but we don't have a lot of influence over major projects. Okay, there are new housing developments all around us between Campbellton and Bathurst. Developers are building duplexes, fourplexes, Petit-Rocher, Nigadoo, Beresford, and also to the west, Dalhousie, Campbellton, etc. Very little new construction is occurring in Beldoon. We are fortunate to have abandoned family homes being purchased by individuals from outside our area. Having these homes being reoccupied is good news, but it's not growth. It is simply maintaining the status quo by replacing the former residents. Is it now time to reach out to developers to encourage them to build in Beldoon, perhaps with incentives, since we do not have a municipal wastewater system? But I believe that we have to think positively that where there's a will, there might be a way. It doesn't mean you're going to get a major project with a whole line of duplexes and fourplexes, but here and there and everywhere you might be able to add to our housing stock. The housing needs study was commissioned by the Chaleur Regional Services Commission, and you're familiar with that, and probably more so Paul, earlier this year. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Both federal and provincial governments have implemented housing funding programs for municipalities. Several municipalities in the Chaleur region have taken advantage of these programs today, including Dalhousie, Campbellton, etc. The results of the study have not been discussed at council that I'm aware of, so the public is not aware of any recommendations for the village of Beldoon. And I'd like to know, does council have the intention to actively pursue the recommendations and funding for new housing? This is basically the end of my main material, and I know others have other concerns, including members of council. You know, there's issues like tourism, the status of the highways, which of course is a pet beef of mine as well, and I see that it's on the agenda later. I hope there's good news about that. Small business growth, other community services, etc. As a conclusion, I want to say that it's my belief that population decline and an aging population are the greatest threats to the sustainability of our community. I recommend that council make population growth the #1 goal of the strategic plan, and in developing a strategic plan for our village, council should not restrict itself to the time limit of the present mandate, nor to existing resources, financial or otherwise. The City of St. John recently approved a 10-year strategic plan. We should not equate strategic plan with the yearly budget or the yearly work plan, even though these activities are critically important and they should flow from the strategic plan. The strategic plan must be visionary and aspirational, and I look at that in terms of the responsibility. We talked about a municipal council. You have a responsibility for oversight, an extremely important role. You know, you have to oversee the operation, the finances, the sustainability of the community. But there's also a responsibility for foresight. And foresight is, what do we want this community to look like in 4 years or 5 years or even 10 years like St. John is proposing? It's an extremely important, and the only way you can get there is with a strategic plan. So it is unfortunate that our village has no plan this late in the term. However, it's never too late to start. Now, I want to remind everyone as well that the only plan that I have found on the website, and maybe there's another one, but on the website, is a Beldoon strategic plan for 2008. And I believe that is a very well-made document. You may or may not agree with the objectives or how it was done, but the principles, the values, the vision, and the format was professionally done. And I would like to see something done. So in other words, I'm saying You don't have to invent the wheel. You know, just repair a few spokes and you might be ready to go. Now, I would recommend that funds be added to the 2025 budget to finalize the strategic plan. A yearly work plan or activity plan is a necessary component of any strategic plan, and it must have clear objectives, targets are important, and responsibility centers, and with review points. That's the key. I worked for government for almost 35 years. Some strategic plans were very well done, and other ones were just mission statements and vision, and it went on a shelf somewhere and everybody forgot it. If you don't have targets, if you don't have responsibility centers, and if you don't have review points, it has to be reviewed on a regular basis. Council administration should assess if there are sufficient resources within the organization to carry out the approved task. If not, I highly recommend that a qualified person be hired, possibly on a contract basis, to work on the plan and to go after government funding. That's another beef. I'm sure you all have it. This community, for many, many years, has not taken advantage of government funding. And when you look around what other municipalities have gained from both federal and provincial governments to build their things, fix their arenas, fix their municipal centers, and we borrow money. That's what we do. You know, so forgive me if I'm wrong about some of that, but that's the image that seems to be out there. I also encourage the council to involve the citizens in some form. And here I refer to Campbellton, when they just amalgamated a couple of years back with the surrounding areas. They involved the public in the development of the strategic plan. And as a matter of fact, after the plan was developed, they formed a number of committees, citizen council committees. I think there are 3 or 4 of them, to work on the objectives of the plan. So I've submitted a few of my own concerns and ideas for the well-being of our village, but I know that others will have suggestions as well. To my knowledge, this council has not held any consultation meetings, like town hall type meetings, with residents to date. Forgive me again if I'm wrong on that. I sense that most residents are disengaged from the workings of council, and there's a general feeling of apathy. Meetings with the public has its pitfalls, but the benefits outweigh the risks. The village needs a vision for the future, and citizens must be engaged in providing input and working on solutions. Identifying the problems and the needs is the easy part. Finding a solution requires a concerted effort. Thanks for your time.
Anyone on council have any questions or comments? I have a few. I'll save mine for last.
Replying?
If I may, Your Worship. A whole bunch of areas, but I'm going to touch on the special care facility first. Thank you very much for bringing that back to the table. I couldn't agree with you more. When I seen your presentation, went back and pulled out the one that was presented by, well, at the time I was the mayor, and I did that with a young entrepreneur who was more than willing to come to our community and develop one, as you mentioned, right in this building. Would have housed 42 beds. You know, the presentation was done before, at the time, the Minister of Social Development, who was, what was her name? No, Rogers, Kathy Rogers. She was the minister. I did the presentation with Tara at that time in Fredericton. The presentation was done. She directed us to the Premier, and I'd made this presentation to the Premier, which was David Alward at the time. And I, even to this day, am convinced that if David Alward had won that election, we would have a special care facility in our community. But he got defeated in that election, and it fell by the wayside. But all of your points are very, very right on the button. They haven't changed much in 10 years. There was like 1,700 beds, something like 1,100 were French, 600 were bilingual, and 25 were English. And that's in Gloucester and Restigouche. We were after an English facility. What we ran up against and became the focal point of the rejection was, as you mentioned, I did get letters of crap from social development telling us about, they put you at the top of the list and everything like that. But the game they played, or the game that is played, and it's played to this day, is that they say that you must have 200 people or demand for 200 in the area. So when you have, I'll grab figures and say you've got 100 in Bathurst and you've got 50 in Campbellton. So the figure starts to climb and gets to 75 and they start 175 and they start looking. What this government does is, as you mentioned, they'll approve an expansion to a senior's home in Bathurst or to a senior's home in Campbellton or to one in Balmoral. And what that does is bring the numbers down, and then they start playing the game all over again. And that was the crap that we dealt with for a long time. So, Paul, I'd be more than happy to work with you and deal with this because it is a very, very strong, passionate thing to my heart. I spent a lot of time and effort trying to get this done. Fortunately, I was not successful, but at the end of the day, that doesn't mean that I'm not willing to, say, pick up the gauntlet and try again. So, please, if you need any assistance, even if you'd like to read the report that was done, I'd be more than happy to allow you to take it and read it. The other item comes down to, you spoke about, our nursing, our medical center here. We have recently had a meeting with some of the powers to be, who are responsible for the nursing home here in our community. Deputy Mayor Carmichael was there, I was there, and CAO Lee was there. And, the administration was very open, but their direction was basically to say, they're going to list online what services are provided at our facility. And, and as I mentioned to them, many of you are aware that my wife broke her ankle here, and it took a doctor's prescription to be able to go to the facility, just to be able to have them change the dressings. I went there 6 times. Of the 6 times I went there, not one person was in the building, not one. So the question was asked, what is the sense of having a facility where those people are sitting around doing absolutely nothing, and we have residents of our community who do not even have a doctor? So the question became about addressing with either a nurse practitioner or a doctor, even if it was a couple of days a week type thing. So that conversation, in all fairness to that group of government personnel, they had mentioned that they would certainly deal with it and come back to us with some ideas and recommendations. So we haven't received them yet that I'm aware of, unless CAO Lee has received some that I'm aware of. So with that said, the last comment I'm going to make concerns, as you mentioned, about our tax base and our declining population and things of that nature. When the government realigned all the municipalities and the districts within the province of New Brunswick, there were 338 entities that were realigned. Of that 338, there are now 78 municipalities and 12 districts. So only of the 338 facilities, only 15 municipalities were not touched. Beldoon was one of those municipalities that was not touched, which is why we did not have an election at that time. For me personally, I believe that's a confirmation from the province that, number one, we had gone through an amalgamation joining Beldoon and Jacket River and Armstrong Brook at, earlier, in time. But I also believe it's confirmation that they recognize the strategic position that Beldoon plays in the economic development of northern New Brunswick. And, the port will play a critical role in that economic development. I do agree with your statement that the advantages that council has as a whole are limited in the sense that, we're not going to go out and find businesses. Businesses have to have a reason to come here, and we do brag about our port, about our rail service, about our transportation, about our highways, and even to mention, that we have one of the lowest tax rates in all of New Brunswick. So we consider ourselves a very attractive place. When you look at ports and how they develop, no port can build upward. Every port has to expand sideways, and the village of Beldoon is only the only one within the region when you look at Halifax or St. John that can expand, laterally instead of, up. So I believe that's an advantage for our port. So, with that said, I thank you very much for your comments. They're all very interesting, and thank you for taking the time to make the presentation.
Anyone else?
Ron pretty much filled you up, but I want to thank you for the presentation. It was good points, and I'm certainly in agreement that we need to work on a lot of stuff here in the village. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I, like you, am concerned about the housing issue in our community, and it's something that we have looked at, and we do have an issue with the water source. That's been our primary fault, I guess. However, no, the housing is a big part, and I appreciate the fact that you brought that up. Thank you for your presentation.
Of course, there's always that question about the chicken or the egg. Do you build the houses before the people come, or do you have the people come and then you build the houses? So there is that cost benefit, and you have to really analyze just how carefully you do that.
Anyone else? Okay, so again, Paul, thank you for your presentation there. Appreciate that, and well researched. I did have some comments that I wanted to make. I'll start. I clumped a few of these together. Starting with the ones that I probably agree with you most. The government funding. It's widely known that the village of Beldoon has left more money on the table provincially than almost any other municipality. Been told this by MLAs. Not right. It's, I don't know what adjective you could use that in a time when we could use that money to have it left on the table was absolutely wrong. And we've made it a point to try and do better in terms of going after government funding. I don't think we're where we want to be, but I think we're definitely better at going after government funding, but that was something that was not right, and our village suffered because of it. So to bring that up, you're absolutely right. Government funding is there. It needs to be taken advantage of so that you can help your village grow. And we haven't done that well enough, but I think it's certainly on the radar. The road work, as far as road work, I think you're right there too, but you also need a partner in the provincial government. And we haven't had a partner in the provincial government, especially the last provincial government. I was in a broadcast with Chief Richardson on a television show last year, and we talked about it, how, you need a partner. If you don't have a partner, and you take a look at the road ahead, which you called me about and said, take a look at this. We weren't, and still not, on the radar for any work to be done that I know of. But I have a feeling that's going to change, because I think that we have partners now that maybe we didn't have in the recent past. So we need to take advantage of that, because I think we do have people in Fredericton now, we haven't, I mean, the north is as strong as it's ever going to be. If northern ridings can't take advantage of the fact that we have a government in power now, where we have some MLAs up there, it'll never happen. So we have to strike while the iron is hot, that is for sure. As far as the medical center, I think, I've had an opportunity to meet with Vitalite on a few opportunities. Their heart is in the right place. I know they want our clinic to work. I think Councillor Burke makes a good point that, the clinic, we had a good, I think all council who was at that meeting this summer can say that certainly the motives and the want to make the clinic as good a clinic as it can be is there. When I listen to the government officials tell us that that's what they wanted our clinic to be, I believe them. And I still do. And again, I think we have a partnership in there that's going to be helpful in that regard. I expect our clinic to be, if it's at a certain point right now, to be better in the near future. Housing is an issue in every single municipality. There isn't a municipality in the province that doesn't have a problem with housing. And to underline that fact, you had mentioned Beresford and Bathurst, and rightfully so, they do a lot of development. But they had a recent council meeting where they had acrimony based on the number of homeless people in Bathurst. So you've got sort of a dichotomy in a sense that you have increased housing and yet more people who aren't taking advantage or can't take advantage of it. I'm not sure what the solution is to that. It always seems to be a work in progress, but it's a good work in progress. So I think the housing situation, from any meetings that I've ever been to in Fredericton, every municipality seems to be struggling with the fact they don't have enough housing. And we're one of them. So how we work on that, again, the funding is there. I've been through some meetings through ELG especially, where they're pushing, trying to find a format where municipalities have more support in being able to increase their housing units. And so that's where you start. The 2008 strategic plan that you mentioned, I read it from start to finish, and I have to disagree with you on that strategic plan. That strategic plan actually stayed on the shelf. It never got actioned. And the reason it never got actioned is because it was a novel. And those strategic plans that end up being 300 or 400 pages or 250 pages, to me, they never work. Strategic plans need to be simple, but you need to have one. And you're right, and I think on this council, and even the council that I was on previously, we have to admit that we haven't been able to coordinate a strategic plan with budgets and with policies and with funding. It hasn't come together. You're absolutely right. And anybody that wants to criticize council on that, I think we have to acknowledge that that's true. It's a struggle. We've gone through some CAOs, which hasn't helped, but you're absolutely right. If you don't have a plan, how is it that you can fill in some holes that your community has? So we have to do a better job in that regard. And again, that's one of those things that I think council is starting to find a way. So I think in the near future, that should be better. The one I'll absolutely disagree with you on, though, is amalgamation. I've been at so many conferences. I'm the chair of the Service Commission. I can tell you, anybody directly involved with amalgamation thought the last one did not work, and that's putting it mildly. If you take the community next door, Pointville, Père-Lachaise, Beresford, if you ask any of their officials privately if it's worked, they'll say it hasn't. If you ask their citizens if it's worked, they'll say, take a look at my tax bill. it only works when you have increased tax base equaling the increased population. When that doesn't work, then the amalgamation fails, and it hasn't worked there. And so what I would say is that I don't think for us amalgamation at this point works. I don't believe it does, because how does that amalgamation, for example, if you've, what amalgamated communities that you know of have benefited from the amalgamation, in what way, in terms of tax?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And I know like some of the rural communities that have been amalgamated into bigger centers, some disagree with it. And I think if you look at areas like Benjamin and New Mills, they're getting some advantages to be now part of Bell Bay, or not Bell Bay, Heron Bay. You know, there are certain facilities that, but that's not my point. And I never said that you should amalgamate. I said you have to do a careful cost-benefit analysis. So that was my point.
Fair. So, council, if anyone wants to come in off what I've said, I think my feelings are pretty clear. One thing I will agree with you, though, it's come up in the last meeting. It's been made part of our presentation tonight. I really think it's something that council needs to deal with sooner or later in terms of, is this something that the village and council feels they need or not?
I'm going to make a general comment, if I may, Your Worship. You know, I moved here in 1991, and at that time, Jacket River was Jacket River, and Beldoon was Beldoon. And they went through the process of an amalgamation, that type of thing, and, you know, I'm just going to pull the figures from what I remember. My taxes in Jacket River were about $700 a year at that time. When they went around and evaluating all of the homes in Jacket River for the amalgamation, I received my new assessment, and my new assessment increased by $30,000. And my taxes went down to $500. So my point to that is, you're absolutely right, Your Worship. I agree 1,000% with your statement in the sense of saying that if it's not a benefit for all parties, it cannot work. You know, and in this case, Beldoon, you know, I'm going to assume amalgamated so that they had a bigger population, and it matched well, having Jacket River and Armstrong Brook join them. You know, our cultures are the same. You know, because we're a very strong English community, although we do have, you know, 10 or 12% presence of French within our community. But at the end of the day, it comes down to that the culture, the finances, the population, the citizens, you know, when you look at the region, you know, families, you know, some moved to Beldoon, some stayed in Jacket River, and vice versa. Some moved from Beldoon to Jacket River. It just blended extremely well, and that is why it was successful. But when you have cultural issues, when you have discriminatory issues with the, let's say, the tax base and that type of thing, you're absolutely correct. There's no way it can fly. So that's the point I wanted to make.
I don't see any benefit of it either for us grabbing other communities around us, as I've seen Bell Bay and the issues they're having with their tax. You know, we don't want to have to bring up our taxes up a lot to have to pick up other communities. So I agree that I don't think it's a benefit to pick up the other communities.
Thank you, Paul. Cioli?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so we have an update on the 5-year plan. So I just wanted to, I've got a bit more information on this from Roy Consultants, the engineers that sort of oversee this plan for us. So there will be some more information coming down the way. But I did touch base with them quickly, and they thought it was well worth their while for me to bring this up with council and at least get a little bit of the thoughts going on this. So I just want a very high level, the 5-year plan and what it is for council and for members of the public. So every year, each municipality needs to submit a 5-year plan, which has 5 different sections of provincial municipal partnership roads. So it's effectively for provincial roads within your community. Okay, so what it does is it highlights sections in for Beldoon, that's effectively Route 134. It's a provincial road. Council is responsible for highlighting or identifying certain sections of roads that are, dilapidated, need uptake, and that goes into a plan, and that gets submitted to DTI. And if there is funding from DTI's side, then they will approve sections of the plan. Generally speaking, DTI contributes about 85% of the costs of the project, and the municipality is responsible for about 15%. So we've just had one phase of that plan executed on, which was from Jacket River Bridge up to St. Gabriel's Church. So with that part of the plan being done, your second, third, fourth, and fifth phase all get bumped up one. They all move to phase 1, 2, 3, 4. So this council is going to be need to identify the next section of the plan that needs to go in, and that will go in as phase 5. So we do have, you will be receiving more information from Roy Consultants on this. They do have some parameters that they try to encourage councils to consider when they're looking at this. Obviously, you need to have that 15% available to you to be able to contribute to that if the plan gets approved. This is actually a kind of a different instance. In the previous years that I was here, there was only one time that we received funding for the plan, and we've just received word this year there was a surplus, and it appears that some of the money from that surplus from the province has been injected into this plan. So we have very fortunately been received confirmation that we've got funding for the next 3 years, which is great. So we do have phases 2 and 3 in our plan that are committed to. And it looks like council is probably going to need to be responsible for those phases as well. So I do recognize, I wanted to bring it up because the plan that's in place right now was not done by this council. It was done by previous councils. It just goes to DTI, and it only gets actioned if funding from their side is available. So I do recognize that this is going to be a relatively new process for this council. So if there's questions along the way, please feel free to ask them. But I think what we're looking for right now is Roy Consultants would like for council to sort of start considering sections of 134 that could be addressed in the next phase of the plan. And then they're going to arrange to meet with council and sort of explain their process. And they use some of the data that they have to help support some of the decisions that you're making. Whether there's, storm systems or dilapidated culverts or anything that needs to be looked at, they'll be able to provide you with that information to sort of help you through the process. So just as a kicking off point, Roy Consultants did ask that if, council over the next couple days starts sort of considering the areas that they'd like to see. I have distributed the plan, so everyone should have the current plan. So you should have an idea of where the next sections are. And yeah, we just wanted to provide an update on that, let council know that we are, phase 2 and 3 are being prepared and being designed, which is fantastic. We'll start those in the spring for phase 2 anyway. And we will be looking to set up in the coming weeks sessions with Roy Consultants so that they can kind of bring everyone up to speed on all the information they have and collect the data from council. So that's all that I have on that, Mr. Mayor. If there's any questions, I'll try my best to answer.
Council?
So we can pick any areas. These sections are very small sections. They're only like half a kilometer, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's unfortunate, and I hate throwing these numbers out there because it's just so difficult to take sometimes. But yes, generally speaking, the rule of thumb is you want to try to keep it around a $1 million project. And unfortunately, that equates to a little bit less than half a kilometer. You know, as an example, the project that just happened was estimated, a construction estimate of $1.2 million, and I think it was only 400 meters. Now, there was, of course, storm system and everything that goes along with that. It's not just a straight resurfacing. But yes, that's what you want to consider, is you want to generally be around a 300 meter to 500 meter range, and that would, for loose terms, put that around a $1 million mark.
Thank you.
Just a general comment to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that, you know, the people here understand the numbers. You know, you mentioned about this project being $1 million project there, you know. That means the Village of Beldoon is going to pay $150,000 out of our budget to deal with Highway 134, which is a provincial highway. These are agreements that were signed by all the municipalities in the province to help the province build the roads. The problem we have here in Beldoon is if they were to do 2 kilometers in Nigadoo, they would be doing it from one end of the village to the other. Unfortunately, our village is 23 kilometers long. So when you start looking that the Village of Beldoon is responsible for 148 kilometers of roads, and those are the side roads that come off of Highway 134, at the end of the day, we do have obligations to those people who live on those roads. So if we look at our budget and we say all of a sudden the province decides they're going to do a project of similar to the one that was just done, and we have to pay another $150,000 out of our budget, we don't have an unlimited amount of funds. It comes down to that priorities will have to be addressed. And at the end of the day, I just want to make sure that everybody understands the numbers and that, you know, it's not a never-ending budget, because if the province says it's going to do another section of Highway 134, and we have a section of highway or a section of road that we wish to do that we are responsible for, those may be conflicting, because as our CAO Lee mentioned, you know, asphalt is expensive, and dealing with roads now, half a kilometer can be pretty expensive, you know, that type of thing. So my point is, I want to be sure that everybody understands the numbers, everybody's aware of how it works, and you know, sometimes people feel we should be paving this road, but our budget won't allow it because we just spent $150,000 dealing on a provincial road. So just want to be sure everybody understands those numbers.
Anyone? 2 points. First of all, those are good points. We have not been, I mean, we have, it's been unfortunate in certain circumstances that our village is as long and has as many kilometers as it has to it as it has. It's hurt us in terms of snowplow, because while others have been able to go to private contractors, we haven't been able to because of that very reason, because of the cost. And what Councillor Burke has brought up is very true. So it's a good point. The point that I was going to start with, but just on sort of tailing in on that, is that we have, and it's a balance, you're absolutely right, but we have, I think, now, and I mentioned it a while ago, we have more of a direct line to these government departments than we've had in a long, long time. Even the previous government, previous to the last one, which probably wasn't as northern friendly as maybe we thought it might. I have a feeling that this one will be everything that it's meant to be, and we have a lot of people who are advocates for us. And I think when it comes to our roads, and we all know that we haven't been included as much as we should have, I think if we go through the proper channels, that we can set something up not only for the last summer of our term, but the next term. so that when the council comes in, they're not reading at a road ahead thing where it says 0 projects for the next 3 years, but instead maybe 2 or 3 for the next 5 years. So I think we should be right away, like right now, be taking advantage of that and trying to get in touch with governments and those who are advocating for us. You know, we mentioned Chief Richardson a lot, but he's up there. And we should use those contacts because have an opportunity now that we haven't had for a long time. And that comes with every department and every provincial segment of that department that has a building or a facility in our village. This is our time to take advantage of that. So we should. Anyone else? If not, then we'll adjourn. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
M 2024-1202-120, that the meeting is adjourned at 8:01.
A seconder?
I'll second it.
On the question, all those in favor say aye. Motion passed, meeting adjourned. Thank you.